Let's play a game. Imagine winning the lottery tomorrow. $10 million. Think about how happy you will be 1 year from now. Now, imagine a different scenario. You are in a terrible car accident tomorrow, and you lose the use of your legs. You are paralyzed. Think about how happy you will be 1 year from now. If you are like 99% of human beings, you just made a massive mathematical error in your prediction. You think the lottery winner is going to be living in a state of euphoric bliss. You think the paraplegic is going to be living in a state of suicidal despair. But when psychologists actually measure the happiness of lottery winners and paraplegics 1 year after the event, their happiness levels are almost identical. They both return to their baseline. Welcome to the audio masterclass of Stumbling on Happiness by Harvard psychologist Daniel Gilbert. This book is a delightful, terrifying dismantling of the human brain. Here is the core thesis. You are a terrible fortune teller. You have no idea what will make you happy in the future. You think you do. You plan your entire life, who you marry, where you live, what career you choose, based on predictions about your future emotions. And you are almost always wrong. Over the next 3 sessions, we are going to look under the hood of your brain to see exactly why your imagination is constantly lying to you. Chapter 1. The frontal lobe, what separates human beings from every other animal on Earth? Is it language? Tool use? Opposable thumbs? No. Other animals have versions of those. Daniel Gilbert argues that the defining characteristic of the human being is perspection. We are the only animal that thinks about the future. A squirrel doesn't bury nuts because it is thinking about winter. A squirrel buries nuts because it has a biological, hardwired instinct to dig. But you can close your eyes right now and imagine what it would be like to eat a banana-flavored ice cream cone on the moon. You have an experience simulator. Narrator, the anatomy of imagination. This simulator lives in your frontal lobe, the newest part of the human brain, evolutionary speaking. For millions of years, the brain evolved to react to the present. See tiger. Run. But a couple of million years ago, the frontal lobe exploded in size, and suddenly we could simulate experiences before they actually happened. This is an incredible superpower. It allows us to avoid bad decisions without actually having to experience the pain. We don't have to jump off a cliff to know it will hurt. Our simulator runs the program and tells us, bad idea. So, if we have this amazing supercomputer, why do we constantly make decisions that leave us miserable? Why do we buy the expensive house and realize we hate the mortgage? Why do we marry the wrong person? Because the experience simulator has bugs. Massive, invisible, systematic bugs. Chapter 2. Subjectivity. What is happiness? Anyway, before we can understand why we mispredict happiness, we have to define it. And here we run into our first major roadblock. Happiness is subjective. You cannot point to happiness. You cannot weigh it. Gilbert compares it to the color yellow. If you try to explain yellow to someone who has been blind since birth, you can't do it. You can describe the feeling of the sun or the shape of a lemon, but you cannot describe the experience of yellow. Narrator. The Siamese twin paradox. Gilbert introduces a famous case of conjoined twins, Lori and Reba Chappell. They share a blood supply and part of a skull. They cannot walk normally. They have lived their entire lives attached to each other. When asked about their lives, they say they are incredibly happy. They wouldn't want to be separated. They feel pity for people who have to go through life alone. Your experience simulator hears that and screams, they are lying, or they are delusional. They can't possibly be happy. But who are you to tell them they aren't happy? Your simulator imagines you waking up tomorrow attached to another person, and it predicts misery. But your simulator is imagining your brain in their situation, not their brain in their situation. Because happiness is entirely subjective, we have a terrible habit of assuming that everyone experiences the world exactly the way we do. This is why we buy our friends terrible gifts. We buy them what we want, assuming our subjective experience is universal. Chapter 3. Realism. Now we get to the first major bug in the experience simulator. Gilbert calls it realism or the filling-in trick. Let's do an experiment. Imagine a plate of spaghetti. Really see it. Is the sauce red or white? Are there meatballs? Is there cheese on top? Is it on a white plate or a pattern plate? When I asked you to imagine a plate of spaghetti, I didn't give you any of those details. But your brain did not present you with a blank wireframe model of pasta. Your brain instantly, automatically, and unconsciously filled in the missing details based on your past experiences. Narrator. The danger of the trick. This filling-in trick is essential for vision. Your brain literally fills in the blind spot in your retina every second of your life. But when your brain uses this trick for perspection, it ruins your life. When you imagine getting married, your brain fills in the details. It fills in a beautiful sunset, a perfect dress, smiling friends, and endless romance. What does your brain leave out? It leaves out the argument about who is taking out the trash. It leaves out the in-laws. It leaves out the expensive plumbing bill. Your brain imagines the future like a Hollywood movie trailer. It only shows you the highlights. But you don't live in a trailer. You have to live through the entire 2-hour movie, including the boring parts. Chapter 4. The blind spot, the absence of details. The filling-in trick leads directly to the next bug. We fail to account for what we don't imagine. Gilbert uses the example of buying a new car. When you are at the dealership, your experience simulator is running in overdrive. You imagine driving down the highway with the windows down, listening to your favorite song, feeling like a millionaire. Based on that simulation, you agree to a $700 a month car payment. Narrator. The reality of the commute. 6 months later. Are you as happy as you predicted? No. Why? Because when you simulated owning a new car, you only simulated the car. You didn't simulate the traffic jam. You didn't simulate the fact that you still have to go to the same boring job. You didn't simulate the argument you had with your boss that morning. The new car does not exist in a vacuum. It exists in the messy, complicated, annoying reality of your everyday life. But your imagination is a spotlight. It only shines on the one specific thing you are thinking about, the car, and it leaves the rest of your life in darkness. This is why we think moving to California will make us perfectly happy. We imagine the sunshine. We forget that we will still be us when we get there, with all our insecurities, our bad habits, and our tendency to get annoyed by traffic. Chapter 5. Presentism. Your imagination is a slave to the present moment. Gilbert calls this presentism. When we try to imagine the future, we don't actually travel through time. We just look at how we feel right now and project it forward. Narrator. The geography of time. Think about how your brain processes reality. Your brain relies on the visual cortex to see what is in front of you. But when you close your eyes and imagine a visual scene, your brain uses the exact same visual cortex. Your brain uses the same hardware for seeing reality and for imagining reality. But reality has priority. If you are looking at a bright red wall, and I ask you to close your eyes and imagine a blue sky, the red bleeds in. The same thing happens with your emotions. If you are currently depressed, and I ask you to close your eyes and imagine a blue sky, the red bleeds in. The same thing happens with your emotions. If you are currently depressed, and I ask you to imagine what your life will be like in 5 years, your simulator uses your current emotional hardware to build the simulation. Because your current hardware is flooded with sadness, your future looks incredibly bleak. Conversely, if you just fell in love, and I ask you to imagine the future, your simulator is flooded with joy. You imagine that your marriage will be absolutely flawless for the next 50 years. We cannot transcend the present moment. If you are angry at your boss today, you will imagine quitting your job tomorrow with fiery, righteous indignation. But when tomorrow actually comes, and your anger has faded, the idea of quitting sounds terrifying. Chapter 6. The psychological immune system. Let's transition to the most fascinating, mind-bending concept in Gilbert's book. We've established that we are bad at predicting the future. But we are specifically terrible at predicting how we will feel when things go wrong. If I ask you, how will you feel if you get fired from your dream job? Your experience simulator runs the program. It imagines the walk of shame to your car with a cardboard box. It imagines the embarrassment. It predicts deep, sustained misery. But what actually happens? If you track people 6 months after they get fired, what do they usually say? It was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to reevaluate my life. My old boss was a jerk anyway. I'm so much happier now. Are they lying? Are they just trying to save face? No, they actually believe it. They are happier. Just as your body has a physical immune system to protect you from viruses, your brain has a psychological immune system to protect you from despair. When you experience a massive trauma or a negative event, your psychological immune system kicks in. It begins manufacturing rationalizations. It shifts your perspective. It alters your memory. It synthesizes happiness. Yes, synthesized happiness. We tend to think that natural happiness, getting what we want, is real, and synthesized happiness, making peace with what we didn't get, is fake. Gilbert argues that synthesized happiness is every bit as real, and every bit as enduring, as the happiness you feel when you get exactly what you want. Chapter 7. Rationalization. How does the psychological immune system work? Through the magical power of rationalization. Your brain is a brilliant lawyer. When you make a decision, your brain immediately goes to work defending that decision and tearing down the alternatives. Narrator. The college rejection. Think about a high school student waiting for a college acceptance letter. She wants to go to Harvard. She thinks if she gets into Harvard, her life will be perfect. She thinks if she gets rejected, her life is over. She gets the rejection letter. For a day, she is devastated. But then, the psychological immune system activates. Suddenly, she starts noticing articles about how Harvard is overly competitive and stressful. She remembers that Harvard is in Massachusetts, and the winters are freezing. She looks at the state school that accepted her and realizes they have a better intramural sports program and warmer weather. Within a month, she says, I am so glad I didn't get into Harvard. I would have been miserable there. Her experience simulator completely failed to predict this. When she looked into the future, she only simulated the rejection. She didn't simulate her own brain's ability to immediately rationalize the rejection and make her feel better. Chapter 8. The Paradox of Choice. Why return policies make us miserable if the psychological immune system is so great? How do we trigger it? Here is the most counterintuitive, brilliantly cynical twist in the entire book. The psychological immune system only works when we are trapped. It only works when a decision is irrevocable. Narrator. The photography experiment. Gilbert and his colleagues conducted a famous experiment with a photography class. Students took dozens of photos and printed their 2 favorites. The professor then told them they had to give 1 photo to the school, and they could keep the other. The students were divided into 2 groups. A group A, the escapable choice, they were told they had 5 days to change their minds. If they wanted the other photo, they could swap it out. A group B, the inescapable choice, they were told the decision was final. Once they chose a photo, it was gone forever. Which group do you think was happier with their photo a week later? You would think Group A. We all love keeping our options open. We love stores with a 30-day no questions asked return policy. But the results were the exact opposite. Group B, the inescapable choice, loved their photo. Group A, the escapable choice, agonized over their photo. They hated it. They kept wondering if they should swap it out. Narrator. The mechanic of commitment. Why? Because the psychological immune system does not activate when a choice is reversible. If you can return the sweater, your brain doesn't bother doing the hard work of convincing you that it's the most beautiful sweater in the world. Instead, your brain focuses on the flaws, wondering if you should take it back. But if the sale is final, if you are trapped with the sweater, your brain's defense mechanism kicks in. It rationalizes the purchase, points out how well it matches your eyes. It synthesizes happiness. This is why people are often happier in arranged marriages than they expect to be, or why people find unexpected peace when dealing with an incurable illness. When you cannot escape a situation, your brain forces you to find the good in it. Chapter 9. The Illusion of Diversity. You are just like everyone else. From the time we are born, Western culture drills a specific narrative into our heads. You are a unique snowflake. You are one of a kind. Your inner life is a rich tapestry that no one else could possibly understand. Gilbert calls this the illusion of diversity. Biologically, we accept that we are similar. If you need a liver transplant, you don't demand a liver that perfectly matches your unique personality. You just need a human liver. But psychologically, we refuse to believe we are similar. We think our emotional reactions to events are entirely unique. We think, sure, other people might get bored living in Hawaii, but I wouldn't. I appreciate sunsets more than normal people do. Narrator. The statistical reality, psychology tells a different story. When it comes to emotional responses, human beings are incredibly boring, predictable, and identical. What makes you happy is exactly what makes 99% of other humans happy. What makes you sad is exactly what makes 99% of other humans sad. Your inner emotional life is not a unique, unmapped galaxy. It is a standard issue, factory-installed operating system. And realizing this is the key to predicting your future. Chapter 10. The ultimate hack, surrogation. If your imagination is broken, what is the alternative? Gilbert introduces the concept of surrogation. Surrogation means using someone else's actual, current experience as a stand-in for your future experience. Let's say you are trying to decide if you will enjoy eating at a new, weird, avant-garde restaurant. Method 1, your imagination. You close your eyes. You picture the food. You imagine the ambience. You run the experience simulator. We know this fails because your brain will hallucinate the details. A method 2, surrogation. You stand outside the restaurant and ask the first person walking out, "Hey, how was the food?" Gilbert ran an elegant experiment to prove this. He set up a speed dating scenario for young women. The women were asked to predict how much they would enjoy a 5-minute speed date with a specific man. They were given 2 different ways to make their prediction. A group A was given the man's complete profile. His photo, his hobbies, his favorite movies, his political views. They were told to use their imagination. A group B was given absolutely nothing about the man. No photo, no profile. All they were given was the rating on a scale of 1 to 10 of another woman who had just finished a 5-minute date with him. Which group made a more accurate prediction of their own happiness? Narrator. The results? Group B destroyed Group A. The women who simply looked at the rating of a total stranger were incredibly accurate in predicting their own enjoyment. The women who looked at the detailed profile and used their unique imagination were wildly inaccurate. Why? Because the profile allowed their experience simulator to hallucinate. They focused on the fact that he liked jazz and ignored the fact that he might be arrogant or smell bad. The stranger in Group B, however, experienced the actual reality of the date. And because human women generally have similar emotional reactions to a terrible 5-minute date, her rating was a perfect surrogate. The rule of surrogation. If you want to know what it's like to be a lawyer, do not watch a TV show and imagine yourself in a courtroom. Find a lawyer and ask them if they are happy. If you want to know what it's like to move to Paris, don't imagine eating croissants under the Eiffel Tower. Find someone from your hometown who moved to Paris and ask them how their Tuesday was. Do not trust your imagination. Trust the data of another human being's actual experience. Chapter 11. The rejection of the cure. Surrogation is cheap. It is easy. It is mathematically proven to be the most accurate way to predict your future happiness. So why don't we use it? Why do we insist on charting our own course? Because of our ego. To use surrogation, you have to admit that you are not special. If a lawyer tells you, "This job is miserable. I work 80 hours a week and I hate my life," your ego immediately steps in and says, "Well, maybe you hate it, but I am different. I have a better work ethic. I will find it fulfilling." We reject the surrogate's data because we refuse to believe that their experience applies to our unique psychology. Narrator. The price of arrogance. Gilbert writes, "We think of ourselves as unique entities, but our emotional lives are roughly as unique as our digestive tracts. When you reject the data of the surrogate, you are arrogant. You are assuming your flawed, hallucinating imagination is smarter than the lived reality of a fellow human being. We make catastrophic life choices, taking on massive debt, staying in toxic relationships, moving to terrible cities, because we convince ourselves that the rules of human misery simply do not apply to us. If everyone who moves to that neighborhood complains about the noise, you will complain about the noise. You are not the magical exception. Chapter 12. The Superreplicator Beliefs. If our imaginations are so bad, where do we get the ideas of what will make us happy in the first place? We get them from our culture. Gilbert introduces the concept of superreplicator beliefs. For a society to survive and grow, it needs its citizens to do certain things. It needs them to participate in the economy, buy things, and it needs them to reproduce, have babies. But society cannot force you to do these things. So it transmits beliefs through culture, media, and our parents. It tells us, money will make you happy, and children are the ultimate source of joy. These beliefs replicate perfectly from generation to generation because the societies that hold them survive, and the societies that don't die out. Narrator. The data on children. Let's look at the most controversial example in the book. Having children. If you ask any parent, they will tell you their children are the greatest source of happiness in their lives. But what happens when psychologists actually measure the daily, moment-to-moment happiness of couples over their lifetimes? The data reveals a stark, U-shaped curve. Happiness is high when a couple gets married. The moment the first child is born, their happiness plummets. It stays remarkably low for the next 2 decades. When does their happiness finally go back up to the level of their honeymoon? The exact day the youngest child leaves for college. So why do parents say children make them happy? Because of the psychological immune system. Raising children is an inescapable choice. You are trapped. So your brain synthesizes massive amounts of meaning and love to justify the grueling, exhausting reality of parenting. Gilbert isn't saying you shouldn't have kids. He is saying you should recognize that the belief that kids bring daily, constant joy is a superreplicator myth designed to keep the human race from going extinct. Do not rely on societal myths to predict your happiness. They are designed for the survival of the species, not for your personal psychological comfort. Conclusion. Embracing the stumble. We have reached the end of the psychological funhouse. Let's look at the incredible, paradoxical machine that is your brain. It is a brilliant supercomputer that has allowed us to build cities, cure diseases, and walk on the moon. But when it points its lens toward the future to predict its own happiness, it is blind. You are going to make mistakes. You are going to imagine a future that does not exist. You are going to buy things you don't need, and you are going to worry about disasters that will never happen. But Daniel Gilbert leaves us with a profound sense of comfort. Because even though you are a terrible fortune teller, you are equipped with the greatest shock absorbers in the universe. When you make a bad choice, your psychological immune system will step in. It will. The facts. It will shift your perspective. It will synthesize happiness out of thin air. You do not need to orchestrate a perfect life. You do not need to map out the next 20 years with flawless precision. You just need to accept that you are a normal, wonderfully resilient human being. If you want to know the future, ask the person standing next to you. And if things go wrong, trust that your brain will find a way to make it right. We don't carefully march toward happiness. We stumble on it. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe.